Blog Talk Radio.
Across the country and around the world, streaming live on the internet, it's Real Estate Coaching Radio, bringing you the latest news, interviews, and secrets of the top producers. Hosted by award-winning real estate coaches, Tim and Julie Harris.
Okay, we are back, and man, do Julie and I have a great show in store for all of you today. If you've noticed, we are not shying away. Matter of fact, we are welcoming the most controversial topics in the real estate industry today. And today we're going to be talking about something that I have to say is the holy grail, the one thing you never talk about, and oh my gosh, all the stars will align against you if for some reason you start talking about it. Yes, I'm talking about commissions. So Julie, before we get to that, your coaching calls today, you had a lot of private coaching calls today. Share with the listeners some of the challenges that some of your best students are experiencing right now.
That's an interesting question. Well, I had a lot of discussion about the importance of using lots of questions and digging deeper when you are pre-qualifying sellers and buyers. We talked about why you would want to know things like what price the seller has in mind before you show up to the appointment and the advantages you have by gathering as much information before you walk in the door so that you are wasting less of the seller's time and your own when you're actually in front of them. We talked a lot about knowing whether they're interviewing multiple agents or not. We did talk, I had a couple of calls that were considering doing the flexible fee commission and all the different reasons why you might want to look at that. In the two scenarios today, they were both short sale situations, so the agent was trying to figure out, well, is it a short sale? By the time we price it right, it might be a short sale, and at that point, of course, their commission is paid by the bank. But until then, maybe they're on the edge. A lot of the prices going up are changing that scenario. So, sometimes it was they were going to sell and then buy, and the agent wanted to chip in and help them a little bit.
I'm sorry for jumping in here, Julie, but you just said something that was too important, and we've got to go back because this is really critical. And, again, this is something that, frankly, when Julie and I were dealing with the whole commission objection on a regular basis back when we sold real estate, this is this typical scenario, and a lot of you are going to be experiencing exactly what we're about to tell you. You're going to go meet with the seller, and they are going to be marginally underwater by, always the amount of money that they're going to be paying you in commission.
It almost exactly like your commission every time, yep.
That's right. So the question that you'll be faced with in many markets, and it doesn't really matter what price range, is, so listen, if I were to list this property with you at what you're asking, whatever the commission is, I'm going to be underwater by almost the exact amount. So in other words, Mr. Realtor, Mrs. Realtor, the simple fact is that I'm losing money because of your fee. Now we're going to talk more about that.
You're the only reason that I'm upside down.
That's right. And guess what? That's going to happen a lot in your practices. So as we say that to you right now, what do you tell them? What are your objection handlers? How do you overcome that very normal, typical situation as the real estate markets across the country continue to heal from what I'm sure historically will be remembered as a depression, not a recession, but a depression, as we enter into what I feel is a 7-year corrective cycle into what will be probably the best time in all of our careers to sell real estate. You're going to be faced with sellers who have a multitude of different situations, all coming back down to their equity situation. So on today's call, we're really going to be focusing on different options. We're going to be talking about the different, frankly, commission structures that exist in the marketplace. And yes, we realize this is a very taboo topic. This is something that not a lot of people like to talk about. And frankly, this is something that everyone needs to be fully versed on because you're going to be facing it every single day in your real estate business. So before we get to that, Julie, I'm interested in what you said. You said something else. You are coaching your private coaching students the importance of doing not just a cursory pre-qualification job, but a ridiculously in-depth pre-qualification job. Tell me about the types of extra deep questions you're asking and how that puts the listing agent or the potential listing agent, your coaching clients, at a huge advantage when actually meeting with the seller.
Well, our example today that I just finished that call with was one of my great clients in Fresno, California, and we were talking about a question that simply asks, will you be speaking with other agents? And he said he didn't really necessarily want to know that, it might freak him out a little bit and that kind of thing, which I can appreciate. Every time we know we have competition, it kind of changes the game a little bit. But that's exactly why you do want to find out. So the first question is, will you be speaking with other agents? I'm curious, will you be speaking with other agents? Okay. And that's where most agents they don't want to ask that question. But that's just the tip of the iceberg, because the next question is, that's interesting. I think you probably should. That way you can make a great decision. What do you need to find out from those agents?
Let's role play it. I'm the seller.
Sure. Okay,
I'm the seller.
All right. I appreciate you meeting with me Friday at 4 p.m., Tim. I'm curious, will you be speaking with other agents about the job of selling your home?
And how I'm going to answer is how virtually every other seller you ever talk to will answer. Well, I think my wife is speaking to an agent. The agent lives down the street, so we probably will be interviewing maybe one or two other agents, yes.
That's great. That's a great idea. That way you can know that you're making the right decision. I'm curious, what are you looking for specifically when selecting the agent for the job of selling your home?
Well, I guess I think at this point we are looking for somebody that's going to know how to get our home sold, because we really are in a situation where we have to sell the house, we have to move to Arizona, and our equity situation isn't necessarily what it would normally be. Now, they won't necessarily, guys, little side note, tell you all that extra information, but you can kind of read between the lines. They might, and you can kind of read between the lines and know that they're probably in the house pretty tight. So, sorry, Julie, go ahead.
So I might say, so the net that you walk away with, it sounds like that's very important to you. Isn't that right?
Absolutely. That's probably, for our situation, the most important thing.
Sure. So I'm curious, will you then be listing with whoever gives you the highest price for that reason, or are there other factors?
Well, I suppose, yeah. I mean, frankly, that's the bottom line. Whoever can deliver us the best price that results in the highest net, that's who we'll be listing with.
Sure, that makes sense. And when I meet with you on Friday, what price do you have in mind?
Oh, guys, did you hear Julie go through this with me? Please.
But
so what does she know?
Do most agents do that? No, because they're afraid of the answers.
So what does she know? What does Julie know by the time she shows up for that listing appointment? She knows their motivation. She knows what they're looking for. She knows what the most important thing is that they're looking for when choosing an agent. And guess what else she's discovering before she even steps one foot into that house? What the seller thinks the house is worth. Now,
and why is that important?
You knew, well, exactly. So you want to go back to the role play? That's fine. So, yes, that's correct. I mean, at the end of the day, that is what we're looking for, is whoever can sell the house for the most amount of money. And as far as what else is important, I really don't know. I mean, I don't know really what you agents do to get houses sold, but that is what's most important, whoever can get us the most money for the house.
Well, it makes sense. I think that's on everyone's mind. And I'm curious, since that is the most important thing to you, what price do you have in mind before we meet at 4 p.m. on Friday?
Well, I don't really want to say, to be honest. I'd kind of just like to keep that to myself.
Sure. Well, it makes sense, and I respect your privacy. But, what I've noticed, Tim, is that when people get ready to list their home for sale, they start paying particular attention to what's happening in their own local market. So I'm curious, which home that's recently sold is yours most similar to?
Well, there was a house that's closed about 90 days ago, and that one closed for, I think it was $869, if I remember correctly, and they originally listed for $899. That one sold pretty quick. And then there was another one, $869, yeah, and then there was another one. I actually saw this one during a recent Christmas party, a couple months ago, and that one, I think that one sold for like $925. So those are the two most recent sales that I'm aware of. You might know of some others too, but those.
And
are
how
the ones
does your home compare to those two recent sales?
Well, the one that sold for $925 had a bigger lot than mine for sure, and the other one probably we had an updated kitchen, but their 3 bathrooms were updated. So I mean, those would be the similarities and the differences, I think.
Okay, that makes sense, and I have those up on my computer screen. I'm seeing exactly those homes that you're referring to. So thank you for sharing that with me. That helps me in my research. So, and, basically it's going to go on from there. I'm going to ask about any changes that they've made to the house, any other things that might affect value. The thing that we talked about on our coaching call, Tim, was that most agents, when they hear, because it's highly likely that the seller's going to have a higher price in mind than what you think it's worth based on your comps. Not that ever happens, right? It's just a matter of how overpriced they're going to be. So one of the comments that I had on a coaching call today was, well, when I hear that they're that overpriced, I just cancel the appointment. versus asking the question. So let's continue. Let's say our role play. I say, well, but my house is a little bit better than those. I'm really thinking I need to be at $950 in order for us to have money to move to Arizona. So most agents are going to shoot it down and say, well, that's too overpriced. I don't want to deal with it. So
on the phone, prior to even going on the listing appointment, they're trying to handle an objection, which is a mistake.
But what I heard was moving to Arizona.
That's right.
Do you see what
Motivation.
I'm saying? Yes.
Right.
So our coaching call today was, if they have to sell, you have to help them, okay? Now, can you take it a little bit overpriced, and especially with the markets that are recovering, roll the dice a little bit? Sure. As their motivation increases, the price will decrease, versus just throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Oh, they're overpriced. They're going to be hard to deal with. No, you're asking lots of questions and digging deeper so that you can get to the facts and make a good decision yourself if you should proceed or not. Agents are quick to shoot down appointments, I think, maybe because they're nervous about it and they're looking for a reason to not go. And sometimes it makes sense to not go if they are both overpriced and not motivated.
But, Julie, the secondary thing, and just to drive down this point, is really critical. Julie said something, I hope everyone's paying attention, and then we're going to go into today's topic, which is talking about commissions. But if the sellers have to sell, your mindset has to be that you have to list it. That's it. There is no, if they think it's overpriced, they just might be going off bad information, and you will help them overcome that and understand the market when you go meet with them and show them the CMA. If they are a little bit crotchety, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If they have to sell, you have to list the house. That is your mindset. A lot of you guys have this really, really bad thinking that it's okay to list 50% of the sellers that you talk with, even though they're all motivated. Oh, it's okay if I lose half the time. What? Some of you actually believe that. Right. Why would you believe that? Why would you allow a 50% success rate, or more likely a 50% failure rate, to be part of your thinking? It's just not realistic. No business can survive if it only wins 50% of the time. You cannot survive if you only win 50% of the time. Learn to ask the tough questions ahead of time so that when you go to talk to these sellers, you guys heard Julie and I do this little role play. Julie didn't know I was going to do that with her this morning. She has a script memorized, but as you guys know, Julie's done literally over 100,000 coaching calls, so she has this stuff down pat. You don't have to have it memorized. You can have the script in front of you, and you can just read the questions, listen to the answers, and read the questions. You don't have to have it memorized. We do want you to internalize it, and then also, once you've internalized it, we want you to personalize it. So everyone that's listening today who have been told in the past, you must memorize the scripts and say them verbatim. No, you don't. You don't say the same thing to somebody in Texas as you do in Ohio, as you do in New York, as you do in Florida. People have different ways of expressing themselves, different local speech patterns. And, I'll tell you right now, if you talk like I'm talking now, quickly in Texas, for the most part, if you're not in Dallas or Houston, really, people are going to think you're rude. You have to slow your speech pattern down. You have to get to know people. So you have to know now, if you're in New York City, if you try to get to know them, if you try to sit down and, have the lemonade on the lanai with them like you would necessarily at certain parts of the South, good luck with that, right? They're going to not take you seriously.
Yeah.
So you do have to, now, again, our scripts work. The scripts work when you work them, but we don't expect you to memorize them. We do expect you to internalize them. In other words, know the pattern, have the scripts in front of you when you're speaking with sellers and buyers and whatnot, and then personalize them so that they work for you, so the words coming out of your mouth are your words and you feel comfortable using them. That's really critical, isn't it, Jules?
It is critical, but agents typically try to personalize first, otherwise known as winging it, okay? So we're on to you. That doesn't work, okay? So they do that to cut corners because they don't want to take the time to learn the scripts. They get impatient, whatever, which I appreciate. We all want to get those commission dollars coming in as fast as possible. But the secret to it is the more you have internalized them, the better you are at personalizing them. And, I'm coaching a lot of musicians and ex-musicians, so I use this analogy. When everybody's seen a jazz musician on TV improvising, having a great time on stage, sounding really great, and we look at them and go, well, how do they do that? They're not reading music. So did they roll out of bed with that ability? No. The only reason a jazz musician can improvise is because they learned their chords and their scales. They internalized them, and now they can mess with them and combine them in new, beautiful ways. They couldn't do that without the core teaching and learning that they went through, and now they're able to personalize at such a high level, it sounds natural. Could they have done that before they knew their scales and chords? Absolutely not.
Right, and Julie Julie is a classical musician, so she's speaking from personal experience. So, guys, think about that. Think about and relate to and internalize what we're sharing with you today. Tim and Julie Harris Real Estate Coaching students, Harris Real Estate University coaching students, use the scripts that you're paying for. I love what Julie said. Don't take the scripts and just basically decide to rewrite them on your own. Why would you do that? Or even worse, don't just basically take the scripts, stick them in your desktop or your desktop drawer, your desktop on your computer, both ways, and then not use them. Don't do that. It's insanity. This works. The scripts works. How we ask you to present to them work. Again, internalize and then personalize. But don't fret because you haven't memorized. A lot of you will get stuck because, I cannot do what you're asking me to do because I haven't memorized the scripts. I got news for you guys. Julie and I wrote the scripts, but I haven't memorized them. I haven't.
You'll memorize them as much as you need to on the road by using them. Earn while you learn. The sellers and the buyers and the prospects, they don't have a copy of the scripts. And, Tim, what is a script anyway? It's just some logical questions that pull information out of the prospect so that you can better help them. In an order in which you can win. That's what it is, really. Yes, it's basically a pattern in which you ask questions. And you'll notice that what Julie was doing was asking questions. Every single thing was a question, and then she'd acknowledge the question. Ideally, how soon do you want the home sold? Well, and then the seller might reply, well, I should have had the home sold already. We're moving to Arizona. Arizona, wow, that's exciting. And then go on to the next question. So everything in our scripts is question-based. And again, a classic newbie agent or even experienced agent that's never been corrected on this bad behavior goes into a dissertation on why they're so great or trying to impress the seller with their market knowledge. The seller doesn't care. And here's another little mindset shift for a lot of you. Hopefully you guys get this. Who asks you questions? Who asks you questions? Think about it in your life. When is the last time you actually had a question, an exchange conversation with anybody that asked you questions and listened to the answers? It was caring and considerate of what you had to say and was obviously trying to help you. When did that actually happen last time in your life? Hopefully your significant other or your spouse. Hopefully your preacher, your pastor, your rabbi, or what have you, they're listening to you, they're asking you questions, and they're asking more questions designed to help you. Maybe your mother. Beyond that, nobody. Everybody, when they're talking, is always focusing not on what you're saying, but they're always thinking about what they're going to say next. That is the natural pattern of behavior when people are communicating. So don't make that mistake. Be somebody who is a thoughtful listener by asking questions, by following the script. That's how it works. So Julie, before we get on to that, I wanted to touch on a little bit. We had an email that came this morning I thought was very interesting from somebody who was, I'm reading it again, just scanning it real quick. It's funny. This email is very similar to a free coaching call I had with someone who's in Real Estate Coaching Essentials. And it revolved around, and you'll love this because you've run into this all the time, it revolved around leads. Now, I'm not going to use her name, Susan, because I don't want to embarrass her, Susan. Okay, but here's what happened. And again, this was not only a call that I did this morning, but it was also an email. So this, I'll just use the email as an example, and then I'll integrate Susan, though I'm not going to say her name publicly because I don't want to embarrass her, and I know she's listening. So she, sorry. So here's what happened. Okay, she had 5 buyer leads, and this email person, by the way, had 3. So these were like the exact same questions. And this person was saying, the person emailing me was saying they're too busy to, follow their schedule. They've done the real estate treasure map that was part of Real Estate Coaching Essentials, and blah, 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 how they manage their time. And I asked them in this little short email exchange, well, tell me what you're spending your time doing. Sounds like a logical question. I have these 3 terrific buyers, and they're da-da-da-da. Okay, how do you know these are terrific buyers? And by the way, what's the definition of a buyer that has to buy? Or give me an example of a buyer that absolutely positively has to buy. Well, this person and Susan, by the way, both knew the answer that at the end of the day, there is no such thing as a buyer that has to buy.
So they knew that because that's just a fact. A buyer can always rent. But where Susan and this emailer got caught was where they started to go through and tell me about their great buyers. Oh, buyer this and buyer that. They're so motivated. And I asked these questions. Okay, and everyone needs to be thinking about this. This is a two-part little dissertation here, and then we're going to get to the topic of commissions today. So has your buyer been approved by a lender? Oh, of course they've been approved by a lender. They had a 5-minute conversation. No. Approval means 3 merge credit report check. Approval means income verification, asset verification. Approval means they are actually approved, and the only thing that is left to do to get them the mortgage is find a house, and so the mortgage approval is only subject to the house appraising. That's it.
Right.
That's an approval. So I asked Susan,
and if you don't have those facts, why would you take someone out and show them anything?
Okay, so what happens? Why do agents not know the difference? So, guys, here's a little fact for you. Pre-approval and pre-qualification are both made-up terms. They don't really have any value. That's the reason that they get exchanged all the time. And if a buyer comes to you and they say, well, I'm pre-approved, a lot of you are going to say, cool, let's go jump in my car. I'll find you a house. Then you later find out if they're in contract that they had a 5-minute exchange with some online website who said they're approved up to a certain amount, subject to 15 million forms of documentation that the buyer hasn't even started on.
Subject
so what you have to do,
becoming employed.
That's right, exactly. We had one when Julie and I were selling real estate where the guy, and we didn't work with him after we discovered this, but the guy had to sell Persian rugs in Iran in order to come up with his down payment. That was basically. Yeah, I know. I mean, it's okay. So and a buyer's not a buyer until they've been approved by a lender. Literally, the lender has gone through the whole verification process, and the lender's letter that you get back says Bill and Betty Smith are approved up to $500 or whatever the amount is. You don't necessarily have to have it shown in the lender's letter for the sake of negotiating because the seller will ask for it. But they've been approved to purchase the house at 123 Elm Street, subject to appraisal. That's it. Nothing more. And if you don't have buyers that have that level of approval, then you don't have buyers. You have looky-loos, of which for every one real buyer, there's 30 looky-loos, people that don't mind wasting your time. Now, what are your other buyer rules? The buyers themselves have to have realistic expectations of what they're looking for. What does that mean? That they cannot be looking for a mansion when they can barely afford a mobile home. They have to realistically be liking what they're showing them in the hypothetical price range that the lender has approved them for. The third little telltale sign, whether you have real buyers or not, is if they are reactive when you let them know about a property. In other words, if someone is serious about buying a property in this market and you email them, or better yet, call them and let them know about a new listing, or maybe it's someone's pocket listing or whatever, they have to be treating that opportunity to see that house like it's the most important thing in their lives. If you have a buyer right now who you thought was a good buyer, then you find out later that they're actually, you call them today and say, I just found this new great house at, 567 Oak Street, and they're like, okay, well, let's make an appointment to see it on Saturday. Not a good buyer. The next rule is, and again, this is another controversial topic that we'll cover at a later date, but they have to have signed a buyer agency agreement. Now, you can do your buyer agency agreement for 30 or 60 days, but they have to, bottom line, going through all these again, they have to have complete approval, they have to have realistic expectations, and they have to have, and there's other points I can throw in here, but for the sake of brevity, too late, I know, but for the sake of brevity, here we are. And the last one is they have to have been willing and have already signed a buyer agency contract. Now, when Julie and I ran our real estate team, the other thing we had them sign was a buyer net sheet that included a transaction fee, again, another hot topic for another call. By the way, if you'd like to call in and participate today, the number to do so is 347-857-1195. Again, that's 347-857-1195. Or, of course, you can ask questions by emailing directly to questions@realestatecoachingradio.com. The easiest way to get hold of us, 347-857-1195. All right, Julie, moving on. Ready?
Perfect. Yep.
Okay, commissions. Now, in our marketplace right now, yes, I know. Ooh, people are going to be mad that we talked about this,
We warned
aren't they?
them ahead of time. We did.
I know, but every time you talk about, so when Julie and I do live events, and we're always told not to talk about commissions. The broker, the office manager, whoever hired us, we got a solicitation not too long ago to fly down to, what was it, South Africa? Yes, South Africa, Johannesburg, and speak to the realtors down there. Well, okay, maybe we'll do it, maybe we won't, but guess what? Commission's not on the table. Now, why? Why is it that commissions are such an off-topic, taboo conversation in the halls of the Realtor Guild? Can someone explain that to me? Call in. Let me know. Why do you think commissions are something that people never talk about? 347-857-1195. So in the marketplace today, here are the options available to a seller when considering an agent, or the different types of commissions, different type of commission structures. I'm going to present these, and then Julie and I are going to talk about them, and then we're going to compare and contrast, and then some of you are going to take the bold step of actually thinking about, well, how do I want to run my business? How do I want to offer something that the market's asking for and, frankly, get a competitive advantage? So there's the flexible fee. Now, a flexible fee commission structure, Julie, can you explain that?
Sure. So it is exactly what it sounds like. It is flexible. So the advantages to the seller are what they pay, so to speak, what the commission is dependent on how it sells. So, for example, at the top of the flexible fee structure is the traditional model, and I can use percentages, right? We're not worried about.
Well, we're going to use arbitrary percentages, and we're not setting commissions, and you guys have to decide what's blah 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 blah. There's my legal disclaimer.
Okay.
Right, exactly.
Fair enough.
Go ahead.
All right. So let's just say in a typical scenario, fairly traditional, 6%. So, Mr. Seller, you can agree that it's possible that the one buyer for your home, which is going to ultimately close with you, might maybe possibly already be working with another agent. It's possible. If that's the case, I'm sure you'll agree that it's my job to find that agent, create the showing, make sure that they have all their questions answered, and bring you the contract. In that scenario, it makes sense that you'll be paying the listing side to me, the buyer commission to them. That's the traditional route. Now, underneath that, for example, 5%, which is saving you money, is if I sell it myself. And that's
okay, so what Julie is laying out for you guys is what Julie's laying out for you, and those of you who are coaching students, I want you to use this because it's part of your coaching program. It's in the pre-listing package. It's in your listing presentation. It's called Flexible Fee on the top, and Julie is basically reading from that form, telling you what it says. And she's also giving you a short version of the script and how to present it to the seller. The bottom line here is there's different scenarios on how the seller might be charged. 6 or 7% or 8% or 4%, whatever your market is.
If there's no other agent involved, why should they pay the full amount?
Okay, so the top rate is whatever the normal rate is. The secondary rate, Julie's saying, is that if you sell it yourself to your own buyer, you can offer the seller a slight discount off the normal rate. And then underneath that scenario, Julie?
Underneath that, I believe, is if the seller sells it themselves somehow. And it could happen, especially with for sale by owners, for example. Their cousin comes to town, falls in love with the house, they've been dying to live in that neighborhood, and they bring the sale. So if that's the case, then it is potentially maybe even a point less, which, by the way, you're still making more than if there was another agent on the other side.
Well,
so if the seller creates the sale,
that's if the seller creates the sale and just basically so there's 4 different payment scenarios basically. The top one's a traditional commission. The secondary one is a discount if you sell it yourself. The third scenario basically is if the seller brings the buyer, but you do the transaction. And that is, you can do that at a flat fee of whatever you want to do. And then the third or the fourth scenario would be is if the seller finds the buyer, the seller wants to negotiate the contract, close the transaction, hire their own attorney at their title company, and they just basically dismiss you at that point. Then they have to pay a fee of say $9.95. Now, again, we're gonna drive down on all these in a second, drill down in a second. But the bottom line is if you're presenting a flexible fee commission structure to your sellers, that completely and totally overcomes any commission objections that you might get. If they come to you, for example, and they say, well, Sally Joe Smo told me she'd list the house for 4% and you're telling me 6%, you could say, well, Mr. Seller, my commissions are flexible depending on how the house actually sells. So in other words, Mr. Seller, the probability is that your house will sell under one of these scenarios, and when that happens, you actually will save money when you list the house with me versus if you'd listed the house with Sally. Okay, so now we're going to move down. So again, here is essentially what the marketplace offers in terms of commission structures. You have the flexible fee that we just talked a little bit about. Then you have the flat fee, which we're going to talk about in a second. You have the hourly fee. Then you have a hybrid. Some people are kind of combining different things. And then you have the traditional commission. So let's talk about the flat fee. The flat fee commission system has been around in various incarnations forever. So a lot of people, are familiar with flat fee from Assist to Sell and some other companies that basically were charging sellers a flat fee of $1,500 to list their house. But for those of you who weren't familiar, it would be $1,500 if it wasn't in the MLS and they sold it themselves. But if it went in the MLS, it would be $1,500 typically plus whatever the market's co-op commission rate would be, which in most cases is 2.5% or 3%. Everyone knows this, right? So a flat fee is another option that your potential sellers might be considering. In addition to that, you have the hourly fee. Now, I have not really seen this take off, but the hourly fee essentially works the way an attorney would work. The attorney is going to charge an upfront, maybe $500 to get started, and then they're going to charge $100 or $500 per hour, whatever it is, and they're going to send you an invoice every month saying how much money how many hours they worked, and how much
billable
you owe them,
hours,
all that
basically.
type of thing.
Yeah.
Right. There are some people that were experimenting in the real estate business, brokers that were experimenting with an hourly rate. Now, for a whole host of reasons, obviously sellers weren't thrilled about that. And then you have a hybrid commission structure. So a hybrid commission structure, which essentially the flexible fee is, by the way, but a hybrid commission structure might combine the flat fee. Mr. Seller, I'll list your house for $29.95, and these are the services that I'll do. But anything beyond these basic services, I'm going to, from this menu of options, I'm going to charge you extra for, or, I'll do for an hourly rate. So there's kind of combinations of both. So those are the different prominent commission options that a lot of sellers will be considering when they're choosing an agent to list their house. But with all this said,
Tim, I don't cut my commission.
Well, okay, but Julie, before that, I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Is commission ever the most important thing in the eyes of a seller?
No.
What is?
Well, they may say commission, but really what they mean is net to them.
She just said something, and I hope you guys are paying attention. It's super critical. They may say that commission is the most important thing to them, but what they really care about is how much their check at closing is going to be. Interesting, isn't it? Mm-hmm. They may tell you the commission, I'm hiring whoever's cheapest, but they don't care about what you make. They care about what they make. And the objection handler to that, especially if you're using our exclusive flexible fee commission arrangement, is, Mr. Seller, I am sure you'll agree. But what matters most is not the size of the check that I make. It's the size of the check that you make. If the amount of money that you make from selling this house, the size of the check that I hand you at closing, Mr. Seller, meets or exceeds your expectations, do you really care what my commission is? Interesting, isn't it?
I never thought about it that way.
Say no. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Okay. So script alert. That sounded like you were scripted to me. Have you said that before, possibly, or is this the first time?
I just thought of it, Julie.
It was pretty good.
But that's it. You're welcome. Write that one down. We'll use that one. No, guys, that's just a script, so you can use that script anytime. So the number to call in, 347-857-1195, 347-857-1195, or you can email questions. Let me make sure I say this right. questions@realestatecoachingradio.com. But we'd love some callers today. So I know a lot of you are listening. We've just gotten started on this radio show. We've been, obviously, Julie and I have been doing broadcasts like this on Superstar Interviews. We've been doing them for almost a decade. But taking this to the radio level is fun because hopefully you guys will have the courage to contribute. You don't have to agree with us. You can argue with us.
No, and we're not going to pick on you that bad. So don't worry.
No, we will. We will.
Well, you will.
Definitely.
I'll be nice.
Yeah, okay. Julie will be nice, right?
I'll be
so
a
how
good
about
cop.
this? I'll make it easy on you. Any caller-inners, you will ask Julie your question, not me. That way you can have a better experience. All right.
No, I'm just teasing.
All right, so let's call it. Here's the phone number.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Julie.
Go ahead, sorry.
Well, here's the phone number to call in. Here's the phone number to call in, 857-1195, 347-857-1195. Call in and ask your tough questions. Challenge us. Don't agree with us. Agree with us. Support us. Whatever you want to do, we're here. We're ready for you. We're listening. We'll do our best to answer your question, help you make money in your real estate practice. And also, you can email your questions to questions@realestatecoachingradio.com. So call in now, email your questions in now, and I will hopefully answer all your questions live on air today. Go ahead, Jules. I'm sorry.
Well, so, Tim, I was taught that when a seller asks if I'll cut my commission to say no. Any other questions? Are you saying that maybe I should consider some other options? Because I've always been taught that I should just say no and stick to my guns. There will be no commission cutting from this agent.
So the
Why
problem
would that,
here,
be a problem?
Well, so here's an interesting thought for all of you. First of all, in this day and age, sellers expect you to be flexible. Sellers will see just the fact that you offered a flexible fee commission structure. That's obviously what we're advocating here. Because really at the end of the day, a majority of your transactions will close paying a traditional commission. So we're going to get back to this conversation, this hopeful debate here in a second. But the reality of it is the very fact that you're willing to offer a flexible fee commission, even if it sells for a traditional commission amount, you will get the listing because you are willing to offer it, versus the other agent who basically told the seller to piss off. When you say no, any other questions, that in many people's minds will be somewhat of a rude, inconsiderate, unforgivable response. Obnoxious. There's another word.
Especially, think of what some of these sellers have gone through between, maybe being a short sale, maybe not, maybe being behind, maybe their house has plummeted in value and recovered. They've been through a lot. They've refinanced to pay their bills when they were unemployed. To show a level of insensitivity, you're not going to get the listing if you do that. So who cares if you defended your commission?
Right. Someone sent us an email question. It's a great question. Why has traditional commission structures stayed around this long? Don't you think it's because the brokers have a monopoly? Okay, that was essentially a summary of the question I just read. And answers, here's the reason why the traditional commission still exists. And I honestly 100% believe this, and I've thought about this, and I've really debated this with other people. And I thought about this, frankly, for the past 20 years. Commissions are the way that they are because it's the best deal for the seller. Okay? That's why. It's the best deal for the seller. Assuming you are following our coaching or a similar, business model where you're providing such a high level of service to your sellers, your prospective sellers, and they don't have to pay a nickel until the house sells, that is a sweet deal for the sellers, isn't it? You are taking all the risk to get their property sold and only get paid for your time, for any ads you've done, for essentially all the buyer calls, for all the stuff that, frankly, you're going to be spending your life energy doing. You only get paid if the house sells. The seller could change their mind. The seller could not be reasonable on their pricing. The seller could, throw all kinds of roadblocks in the way of you getting the property sold. But at the end of the day, the traditional commission structure is still around because it truly is the best deal for the seller. Let's go back through these different commission structure options, right? Okay, someone asked what the phone number is. It's 347-857-1195, and you'll speak to our screener, and then you will be connected directly to Julie and I live on the air. So please call in with your tough commission questions. That's good. Your tough real estate coaching questions. So we talked about the flexible fee, which we advocate. We talked about the flat fee. We talked about the hourly fee. We talked about a hybrid, and we talked a little bit about the traditional fee. So the pluses and minuses of each. The reason that we advocate a flexible fee is because guess what? All of you already do it, don't you?
That's true.
Think about that. It does not matter who you are in the country right now. If you're selling lots of houses, and by lots of houses I mean 50, 75, 100, 200, 500 houses a year, there are situations where to close a transaction, you're going to have to be flexible in your commission, and you do it every single time. Why? Because it's oftentimes good business, because the rule is some money is always better than no money. A lot of you guys...
There's a coaching lesson in that, by the way, guys. Some agents will go to the mat out of probably ego, perhaps, in some cases, because they want to be right, versus using the some money is better than no money policy, which also gets the deal done.
If you offer a seller a flexible fee commission, all of our coaching students, you guys better be doing this. most times, I'll say this again, this is like the fifth time I've said it, in most cases, it will sell at the traditional commission rate. So there will be no discounting whatsoever. You will have maybe somebody, like, so for example, Mr. Seller, does it make any sense to you, script alert, sorry, Mr. Seller, does it make any sense to you that, Johnny Home Seller, the other agent you're interviewing, has an inflexible commission structure that ties you to a model like a ball and chain does to your work? Does it make any sense to you that you would agree to working with somebody who had such an inflexible commission structure? Because here's the reality of it. You could list your house with me right now, go to church on Sunday or what have you, go to a softball game, start chatting up one of your friends or whoever you sit next to in the pew, and then it turns out they wanted to buy your house. Think about that. Does it make sense that in that situation you're stuck paying a real estate broker 6 or 7 or 8 or 4%, whatever it is? Does it make sense that since you generated the buyer that they would be making all that commission? So you list your house with the other broker and you sell the house yourself, which it could happen, Mr. Seller. Does it make sense to you that you're going to have to pay them for work that they hadn't done? Well, that's what happens when you sign a traditional listing contract that doesn't offer a flexible fee. You are locked down to pay that commission rate and with absolutely no flexibility on the broker's part. Does that make sense to you, Mr. Seller?
Well, when you
Think
put it
about
that
that,
way.
guys. Yeah, exactly. Think about
and
that
particularly,
way.
Tim, here's the thing. As agents, aren't we always asking for flexibility from our sellers when it comes time to get them to accept something that maybe they don't want to accept? Aren't we constantly asking them to have some flexibility on inspections, on closing date, on price, to have the stance that you absolutely are not flexible? It just doesn't make sense in the relationship.
And here's what happens again, guys, the idea here is you're offering this, and you're going to offer this to every one of your sellers, the flexible fee, but the reality of it is most transactions will close in a traditional way. In other words, a traditional, whatever your market correct commission is in your area, because it is different depending on where you are in the country. Lots of places in California, we are coaching the number one agent in California. We coach a lot of the agents that are selling some of the most expensive real estate in the country. Their traditional commission now is a whole 2 or 3 points less than it is, say, for example, in the Midwest, but their sale price is 10 times greater. So it just depends on your marketplace. Obviously, you can talk with your broker about that. Most of your transactions, even offering a flexible fee, will close. If you don't know what I'm talking about, if you're not one of our coaching students, you can send me an email directly, coachtimharris@gmail.com. We can talk about it off the air. But in most cases, because of the nature of how the market works, remember yesterday we talked about having pocket listings. You can imagine how pocket listings and offering a flexible fee, how those complement each other perfectly when presenting to a seller. You guys, little coaching message here, a lot of you guys live in fear of the question from the seller, why should I list with you? What makes you different? If you've listened to the past couple radio shows, we've given you some unbelievably powerful tools that will frankly had that seller ever asking that question of you, because you've already done just 2 of about the dozen things that we coach our agents to do to make yourself different in the marketplace. Just these 2 past radio shows, if that's all you ever listen to, that in itself, those radio shows in themselves will be enough to really differentiate you in the marketplace. So going back to the traditional commission, okay, when you are meeting with these sellers and you're showing them the flexible fee, they're going to find that extremely appealing because you're willing to do something the other brokers aren't.
And if you're not asking, that's a good close, by the way. Is anyone else offering you what we've talked about with the flexible fee? Because I can almost guarantee you, unless they're one of our students, the answer is no.
And sometimes they'll say yes, and then they'll say, okay, well, did they put it in writing? And then you're going to put it in writing. That's right. Again, something else we show our coaching students how to do. You're literally going to put it in writing and show the sellers that you're serious about doing something different. Now, here's a little interesting thought for you. This is counterintuitive. Does the flexible fee, is it more appealing to, say, average and low-end sellers or upper-end, multi-million-dollar, huge commission sellers? Who do you think the flexible fee will be more appealing to? Who do you think?
I think most people would say the lower end, where every dollar is that much more important. But in reality, the bigger the check gets, it starts to matter more and more. I mean, it's all
if
proportional.
You're in a marketplace where you have 7, in some cases 8-figure prices, or even nearing 7-figure prices for your properties, you offer a flexible fee. Trust me when I tell you, it'll rock the market. It will rock the market. It'll make sellers call you. Right. Most sellers of expensive houses, for the most part, are entrepreneurs, business owners, executive CEOs. They are going to appreciate the fact that you're doing something different because they have to do something different, and they had to do something different in the first place to be able to afford those houses. Does that make sense?
Well, and Tim, as you go up in price, those sellers in those more expensive markets also tend to get more critical of agents, and the perception can be, I can't believe how much a real estate agent makes for doing what, you know?
Right.
So they get to be more critical, and the ability to answer the question, what makes you different, becomes more and more important as you go up in price range. I mean, it's important to all sellers, but particularly when we're talking about major commission checks. They want to know.
So on this radio show today, what have we discussed with you? The different commission structures. We've discussed with you the pluses and minuses, not really necessarily in depth, but the pluses and minuses of each. And then we've prescribed to you, especially if you're one of our coaching students, to seriously consider adapting a flexible fee commission structure to your business. Just doing that will make you different. Just doing that will make you special in the eyes of the seller. A lot of fears that you might have with regards to being asked to cut your commission, being asked what makes you different, why should I list with you versus the 10 other agents I'm considering, all those types of questions will be answered in the seller's mind by adapting some of these unique systems that we're prescribing for all of you. Guys, consider the fact that right now we're entering into, which will be probably one of the best spring markets going into the summer that we've experienced in a long time. A lot of shortage of inventory around the country, a lot of buyers that are out there looking, a lot of reasons to be optimistic about the real estate business. What are you going to do to stand out above the crowd? Okay, so here we are. We're broadcasting live. Julie and I are here in lovely Austin, Texas, and it is January 28th. If you don't have your head screwed on straight right now about what you're going to be, action steps you're going to be taking in your real estate business, this message is just for our coaching students. You need to be putting in place immediately the 90-day massive action plan. So, Julie, this is just a special message for our coaching students. We don't need to get into it, what the 90-day massive action plan is, but where can they find that on the website?
Let's see. If they are in the Real Estate Coaching Essentials, it's right there labeled.
It's part of the first level.
It is. It's simple. It's right there. Many of the parts are labeled as Real Estate Treasure Map with a subheading, and then there's a 90-day action plan. There's also a survival plan posted. If you are living on the edge, it's even more aggressive. So really there's no excuse but to take action. We've laid it out with coaching that goes with it, easy, simple, step-by-step guides. The main thing is to take action. Massive action. It's almost the end of January. If you are just thinking Julie, I mean, you're experiencing this with all your private coaching clients, right? I mean, there's more competition right now, people coming out of the woodwork, getting their real estate licenses. The big trend I see, too, is people that have retired from other careers and they're getting into real estate to supplement their depleted savings accounts or whatnot. The competition is fierce right now. I'm sure you're experiencing that with all your grit. Yeah, it is. That's right. So what are you going to do to make yourself different, guys? How are you going to stand out from the crowd? How long are you going to wait before you actually get into action and take full advantage of this? Will be a very strong year for real estate sales. How long are you going to wait? So, Julie, if you were on a coaching call right now with someone that was a little bit, uncertain about what was the next thing they should be doing in their real estate practice, and they realize that it's almost February 1st, and maybe they're getting started really slow this year, maybe they don't have any listings, or maybe they have 10 listings, but they want to get to 20 more to accomplish their goal, what would you tell them to do? Well, the first thing is if you don't have a business plan done yet, you're basically flying blind. You don't have your motivation. You don't have your goals set. You don't have a schedule set. I don't know what you're doing. And getting the business plan done does not take forever. You can get it done in the next few days. That gives you the focus necessary to pursue the things that are in, for example, the 90-day massive action plan. It's the difference between somebody doing, my standard answer is all of them have leads in some fashion. Whether they're a direct referral or they're hunting expireds or whatever, they have leads. So it's the difference between doing your lead follow-up just to say you've done your lead follow-up versus saying this is my next appointment, which will be one of my 10 required listings to meet or exceed my income goals. That's the difference in how somebody thinks who's done a business plan.
But Julie, I have to learn more, and I have to learn how to tweet, and I have to learn how to update Facebook. And there's, Joe Schmo speaker is coming to town, and he's going to tell me how to door knock. And there's all these other things that I need to do and learn, and I just don't know really what to do first.
That's great. How much do you have saved so you can play around with that and spend all of your savings and go broke?
And you guys thought I was the hard ass.
Well, I'm just saying, if you calculate what it takes you to live on versus what you've got in the bank, I can tell you exactly the day that you're going to have nothing if you keep the stance that you have to learn before you earn.
Well, that's a very interesting thing that Julie just said, right? So those of you who are thinking you can procrastinate longer and worry about all these other things and study all these other systems and do all this other Mickey Mouse, you better have at least, a year's worth of savings. And, what Julie just said is exactly what we had normally said.
So I asked them to get out a big red pen. We calculate exactly what day, if we keep on taking our time to learn everything before we actually put it into practice, and we figure out maybe October 22nd of this year is the day that you will go broke. Now, there are a few people who actually have something saved, and maybe they have that luxury, but by and large, it's time to earn while you learn. You don't have to be perfect in any of this to make lots of commission.
That's right. So, guys, what are your questions? Do you have any questions for us? You can email your questions directly to questions@realestatecoachingradio.com. And I just launched, and we're going to start having chat during the call, during the radio show starting tomorrow, so you guys can participate via chat. Well, sometimes it will. And, again, if you want to get hold of me directly, you can do so. Or Julie, where our emails are very similar. These are our private emails. You can email Julie at julie@myhreu.com. And you can reach me at tim@myhreu.com. And remember, another way to stay connected with us is obviously on our Facebook page. It's, facebook.com/Tim and Julie Harris, or facebook.com/Harris Real Estate University, or facebook.com Real Estate Coaching Radio. And, of course, you guys can always visit our blog, realestateinsidernews.com. But, frankly, if you want to get hold of us directly, the easiest way is always going to be to email us, Coach Tim Harris at our private email, CoachTimHarris@gmail.com, or Coach Julie Harris@gmail.com. So that's enough information for you as far as how we can be contacted. So, Julie, tomorrow we're going to talk about another really, really debatable, hot topic. I'm hoping to I know yesterday's topic when we were talking about the different subjects, different things we touched on, a lot of people were confused. A lot of people were maybe a little bit dumbfounded that someone has the guts to talk about all these sort of, off-limits conversations. Guys, the fact is that the market is shifting. The fact is that the sellers are smart. The fact is that people can go online and research just about anything nowadays, and you have to be thinking more like a business owner than like a salesperson. You have to be thinking in terms of what's going to make you different and give you an almost unfair advantage in your marketplace, and that's really what we're doing our best to offer to you. By giving you ideas and business systems that have been proven to work in every market, in every price range, at the end of the day, what happens is you will stand out from the crowd. It takes far less than you think to be very successful in this real estate business, provided you adapt things to your business that will actually work, and that's the key thing. So, Julie, is there anything else you'd like to contribute or say, or any other ideas you have that we want to share, or we're going to wrap this show up?
Well, I think the theme over the past couple of days is flexibility and creativity in the deals that you're doing, and not being so rigid in what you will do and won't do, what you're able to do, what you know how to do. Agents who have the highest level of flexibility and creativity and open-mindedness to simply helping their prospects and clients out, those are the same agents that make all the money in this business. So I would encourage everybody to have an open mind to putting their deals together, and maybe that means you've got to be a little bit creative here. We're not suggesting that you do all of your transactions the same way. Maybe your appointment this afternoon would love the flexible fee, and that's very appropriate for them. But tomorrow you're going on a short sale listing, and it's not so important to them. The point is that you have many tools in your toolbox. That's where the money is made in terms of, agents that actually have that kind of flexibility versus saying, well, I only do this type of deal. Make sense?
So, Julie, I just got a really interesting question. It's a good question to end today's radio show with. Someone asked if our coaching is right for this agent has been in the business for 10 years. I'm just judging by the email and what they said. They said they sold 12 houses last year, and so let's assume that he's an okay producer. He doesn't tell me what his average sale price is. He is in Florida, so we can assume his average sale price is probably around $250. So he's asking if our coaching is for him. That's what he's asking me. What do you think?
Well, of course. I mean, anybody who wants to move forward, be successful in anything, we all have coaches in different things.
Well, but should everyone hire a coach? I mean, should everyone?
Well, if you're not going to be coachable, then no.
There's the answer right there. So, maybe coaching isn't for you. Maybe you're not ready to hire a coach.
I tell people, eat your Wheaties, because we don't know how to coach you any other way than to be a top producer. If somebody says, my goal is to do maybe 5 or 6 deals a year, I tell them to roll out of bed and door knock. I'm done.
That's right.
Hold an open
house.
And, you don't need a coach if that's going to be your thing. But if you want to make a career out of it and be super successful, and you want to do it quickly and save yourself some of the learning curve and cut to it, then of course, but be coachable.
So if you're not wanting to hire a coach and you basically are thinking you can wing it and do it on your own, you know what? You might. It's true. You probably could piece together. There's plenty of people that have done it. I'm not saying you can't do it.
It takes longer.
Yeah, well, it takes longer. There's going to be a lot more trial and error. So you got to ask yourself, why did you get in this business? Did you get in this business to basically be somebody who can go out on their own and figure out how to make their own business, and your goal is, to create something novel and new? Or is your goal when you got into this business to make money? Now, obviously, your goal has to primarily be doing what's best for your clients, but I assume you're not running a not-for-profit, meaning you're wanting to actually make money. And if that truly is your goal of making money and building wealth, why would you do anything other than following in the footsteps of people that have gone thousands of times before you? It just doesn't make any sense, does it? Some cases you're not coachable, like Julie just touched upon. Sometimes you basically, if you're wanting to sell just a handful of houses to pay for a trip to Disney World for your kids in August, work your neighborhood. Go to BNI meetings. Do stuff that's, frankly, low impact. It doesn't cost you anything, and you'll probably stumble into a few transactions. So, no, coaching is not for everybody. Coaching, especially our coaching, is for people that are serious about their businesses. We want to treat all of you like business owners first, i.e. entrepreneurs, and salespeople second, not just basically treating you like salespeople that need to be lashed every single day. You have to think like a business owner, because at the end of the day, guys, that is what you are. You don't believe me? Well, check to see what tax forms you mail or you send in. Check to see how the IRS treats you. They treat you like you're a small business owner, because that is what you are. So think of it that way. And if you think we're a good fit for you, obviously reach out. There's a dozen different ways to do it. I've shared some of them with you on this call. And we'll talk, and we're a good fit. We're a good fit. And if we're not, well, hopefully we'll have shared with you some ideas that will move your business down the path that you choose to take it. So listen, we enjoyed today's show. Tomorrow's topic is going to be more controversial than the ones for the past couple of days. We want you to participate, so please call in tomorrow if any of you have any questions. I appreciate the fact a lot of you are emailing questions. That's great, too. But you can call in tomorrow at 347-857-1195 or email your questions to questions@realestatecoachingradio.com. So we look forward to speaking with you tomorrow, and have a fantastic, very productive, very profitable rest of your day.
See you guys soon. Bye-bye.